This is the heart of the presentation here. It's how natural law actually works in our lives. What are its expressions? How can we come to understand how this operates? There are ways of knowing, and they're through these expressions of natural law. So we defined what natural law is. We talked about the underlying principles that it's based upon. Now we are going to talk about how it works in our lives, okay? So we're going to build a chart of the natural law expressions in a moment. What these expressions are the recognizable workings in our life. And they take place through 5 basic expressions. Each of the 5 expressions of natural law have a positive aspect and a negative aspect. So that gives us a total of 10 overall natural law expressions. And we're going to build a chart regarding these expressions. Okay? So here's the expression, and then there's a positive aspect to the expression, and there's a negative aspect to the expression. The first expression of natural law is known as, and again, this is what I call these things. There's no hard and fast rules. It's just terminology. It's jargon to try to explain them in words. Okay? These are unseen concepts and laws in reality, in nature, in the nature of the universe. Okay, these are just English word terms that I'm applying to these concepts. Okay? So the first principle of natural law I call the generative polarity. Or in other words, this is the force or energy that we are using at the base level to start the process of creation. Or you could say of co-creation. Okay? We're co-creating the reality that we experience with the laws of nature. So you could look at the first first expression of natural law, which is the generative polarity, as the force that we use to set all of the other events which are to come, which are to manifest in our lives, into motion. Or in other words, what we use, the force that we use to generate or create the quality of our experience. That's the generative polarity. The positive expression of the generative polarity is love. Now, this is not what many people think of as love, okay? It's not familial love. It's not relationship love. It's not Hollywood movie variant of love. It's not romance novel variant of love, okay? I call love consciousness. Love is the force which helps us to expand consciousness and become open to truth if we are in it. If we are in that vibratory energy, we become open to truth. All right? So here's what it looks like visually. I try to put a visual aspect to all of these concepts, okay? And people would think I'm going to put 2 people together kissing or hugging or something like that, okay? Love is inside each individual if it's present, okay? It doesn't depend on any other person. You can express love with another person, and there's no problem with that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's a great thing if it's present in your life. The capital L, capital O, capital V, capital E definition of love that I'm giving here is not that. It is this force that opens up our consciousness. It's the flowering expression of consciousness, okay? So how I word this is the positive aspect of the generative polarity, the first expression of natural law, is love. In regard to natural law, love should be seen as the expansive force for consciousness. It is the force which helps us to become open to truth and expand our awareness. That's the connotation that I'm giving for the concept called love here. Okay, that's the positive expression of the creative polarity. Now, the negative expression of the creative polarity is the exact opposite of love. So people will automatically think, well, that's hate. And it is not. Because the thing that puts consciousness in a box and prevents it from growing and keeps it where it's at is what? Fear. There it is. Fear. Fear is the basis for unconsciousness. You cannot be unconscious of anything in particular unless you fear it. Okay, that's what shuts consciousness down. And here's my visual for it. Fear. I don't want to look at that. That's too horrible for me to contemplate. That can't be true. I don't want that to be true. That's all fear. Okay? The negative aspect of the generative polarity is fear. Fear is the contractive force for consciousness. Fear is the force which influences us to become closed to the truth, and it is the force which ultimately shuts down our awareness. That's why so many people are unconscious, because they are fearful. They are fearful of the responsibility that comes with knowledge, and most of all, they are fearful of having to act based upon knowledge, because that requires courage. The second natural law expression is the initiating expression, what I call the initiating expression, just my term for it. Okay? The initiating expression is the first stage of tangible and recognizable results which we produce in our lives after we have, quote unquote, set the ball rolling, okay? Set the dynamic in motion by choosing between the generative polarities of either love or fear, all right? So, we choose love and something starts to happen. We become open to truth, right? Well, love is the expansive force for consciousness that opens our minds to the truth and awareness. So what do we gain as a result of accepting or existing in the vibratory energy called love? We gain knowledge, which is the acceptance of truth. Since love opens us up to truth, knowledge is its reception. It is the receiving of truth. We come to know, okay? So that's how it starts. I call this the initiating expression. Now, of course, there's a negative initiating expression if we are existing in the vibratory dynamic of fear. That would be the opposite of knowledge. What is it? Ignorance. Right. Okay, now, this is what I put forward as knowledge. This is my imagery for knowledge. Okay? That's a being who knows themselves. You know, and as the mystery traditions of Greece put forward at the Delphic oracle, know the self and you will know the universe. In other words, know the microcosm and you will know the macrocosm. Know thyself. The positive aspect of this initiating expression is knowledge or the acceptance of truth. Knowledge positively influences the quality of our lives because it positively influences our decision-making processes that lead to understanding in every area of our lives. You want to know how something works and ultimately create something good? You have to have knowledge. You want to know how a car works? Keep it running in good order? You have to have knowledge. You want to know how a computer works? Keep it running in good order? You have to have knowledge. You want to know how the human psyche works and keep it running in good order so that conditions on earth manifest the way you want them to manifest? You got to have knowledge. Not getting out of this condition without learning. Learning is the key. It's the answer. Knowledge is the answer. And people don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear it. They want to think we're magically going to manifest the desired conditions that we say we want without learning a thing. It doesn't work that way. So again, the negative initiating expression is ignorance. Ignorance is the refusal of truth. It is the refusal to gain knowledge. Okay? Because we are in fear. So here's what I put as the image for ignorance. You know, the population that is hypnotized, that wants to keep paying attention to nonsense and trivialities, feed themselves tons of GMO food that is crap for the physiology, you know. Pay attention to distraction, entertainment, mainstream news and media, you know. It's all there to just shut the consciousness down and keep people in a depressed psychological state and keep them in a state of psychological infancy. The negative aspect of the initiating expression of natural law is ignorance, or the refusal of truth. Ignorance negatively influences the quality of our lives because it negatively influences these decision-making processes that lead to understanding in every area of our lives. If you're ignorant about how anything works, you can't create the desired condition. It's just not possible. It's important to remember, again, that ignorance should be distinguished from nescience, which means not knowing because necessary information is not present or was unattainable. Ignorance, on the other hand, means not knowing even though necessary information is present because that information has been willfully refused or disregarded. And again, to keep us in ignorance, they don't need to hide the information anymore because it's not hidden anymore. It's out. And then once again, it's available at your fingertips for free if you have the desire to take it in. But now, the manipulation mechanism that is used is dissuade people from looking at it, provide endless entertainment, provide endless amusement, provide endless distraction, and say there's nothing to any of that stuff. That's just some old crazy religion that you don't need to understand. It's no different than any other religion, believing that natural law exists. Okay? That's what people will insist on telling you. So people will be dissuaded from ever looking into it, and they'll disregard it of their own choice. Thomas Jefferson said that if a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. Freedom and ignorance are antitheses of each other that can never coexist simultaneously. That is an impossibility in natural law. I'm going to put up a couple other quotes on ignorance. Samuel Adams said, "No people will tamely surrender their liberties, nor can any be easily subdued. When knowledge is diffused," that means it's everywhere present, "and virtue is preserved," meaning morality. On the contrary, when people are universally ignorant and debauched in their manners, meaning purely selfish and only worried about themselves, they will sink under their own weight without the aid of foreign invaders, meaning the society will turn inward on itself and collapse and destroy itself just based on the fact alone that the population is ignorant and they are ensconced in moral relativism and other forms of debauchery and just self-pleasure as their highest virtue, their highest desire. Socrates said that the only good is knowledge and the only evil is ignorance. And this is a quote I'd like to be remembered for. "Willful ignorance in the presence of knowledge is the measure of a bad person." And people will say that's extremely harsh. That's true. That doesn't make the statement untrue. The statement is true as well. It is a harsh statement. Ignorance is the root cause of all evil. And since only knowledge eradicates ignorance, it is our duty and moral obligation, there's that term, to educate ourselves as well as the masses around us. That's a moral obligation if you're in a position of knowledge. And once again, that's why I do what I do. I don't do it because I like people. Believe me, Barb will tell you how much I like people. I don't do it to make friends. I don't do it to make money. I do it because it's a moral obligation and for no other reason. I don't serve people. I serve truth. Truth is the force which I serve. And I bend the knee to no other. That's it. That's it. Let's look at the next expression. The internal expression is what happens inside of us, very simply. The positive aspect of the internal expression is when we come to understand through developing the knowledge and the acceptance of truth that we are sovereign. Sovereignty is the expression, the internal positive expression of natural law. Now, again, underneath these, in parentheses, I always put what I call these things, another name that I've given to these things, these concepts. I call sovereignty internal monarchy. Internal monarchy. Now, monarchy means one ruler. Mon means one, is a prefix for one, and archon in Greek means ruler or master. So, internally, we each need to master and rule ourselves. This is our kingdom that we get to rule and nowhere else. We don't get to rule over anybody else. Many people think they're the rulers of other people, but they're wrong. Each of us is a sovereign being. Sovereignty, as we're going to see, means that you're not owned by anyone else. No one else owns you if you're sovereign, okay? So here's my expression, my visualization for sovereignty, okay? Somebody who truly has the light. They have the light at their disposal. They're bathed in it. It's flowing within them, okay? And light has always been associated in different mystery traditions as knowledge. It's been a symbol that has represented knowledge. This is the person who has the knowledge and has gone through the decision-making and filtering processes with that knowledge to come to an internal understanding that they are a sovereign being. And I have news for everybody. Whether you know it or not, whether you are familiar with the term or not, every person here is a sovereign. And you can never not be. It is an impossibility for you ever to be non-sovereign. It cannot be done. Cannot be done in nature. Okay? Every single human being on this planet is a sovereign being. And we're going to look at what a sovereignty actually means. The positive aspect of the internal expression is sovereignty, or what I call internal monarchy, meaning one ruler within. Internal monarchy, one ruler within. As a state of consciousness, sovereignty means that one has unified the three aspects of their consciousness, such that there is no internal contradiction between one's thoughts, emotions, and actions. We become a being that as we think, so we feel, so we speak and act. And there's no contradiction between those. We're not torn apart from within in this state of internal opposition amongst our own consciousness. Okay? Moreover, let's break the word sovereign down. That's where we're going to come to the real meaning of the term. Sovereign is derived from the Latin adverb super. Super means above. See, in classical Latin, there's no V in classical Latin, right? There was no V character. Actually, if you wrote a V like that, it was a U, okay? And why a double U looks the way that it is. It's two V's, actually. But that sound was U in Latin, if you see a V. There's no V sound in classical Latin. It doesn't exist phonetically, all right? So this phonetic variation that we express as V or V in English, in Latin was P or B. It was represented by a P or a B. So what we're really seeing here is suver, okay? But it was pronounced in Latin super, like super. Well, what does super mean? Super, you're beyond, you're above and beyond, okay? It means above or beyond, that's what it means. A superman is one who's beyond an ordinary man, right? The Latin noun regnum comprises the second part of the etymological root of this word. Regnum, it comes from rex regis in Latin, or regis. It means king. So regnum was the king's rulership. Regnum means his reign. It's where the word reign comes from in English, regnum, in Latin. It means rulership or externally imposed control. Okay? Not control in the context, I'm going to control my emotions, I'm going to control my behavior. No. It means I'm going to control you externally by imposing my will over your will through coercion. That's the context of rulership or control that I'm talking about here. So put them together. Super regnum, sovereign, means above or beyond externally imposed rulership or control by another. That's what it means. Sovereign means not a subject to another being, like a king, like one who considers himself a king. And it means not a slave to someone who considers themselves your master. That's all sovereign means, folks. Not a slave. And why I say every single person here is a sovereign is because there is no such thing, never has been any such thing, and never will be any such thing as legitimacy to slavery. That has never existed, does not exist now, and never will exist. Slavery is an illegitimate concept. None of us are slaves. The condition of slavery has been imposed upon people, but it has never in history been legitimate, and it never will in history be legitimate. So there is no legitimacy to the concept of slavery, of the rightful rulership of another being through directly imposing your control through coercion. Doesn't exist. That's a big part of what natural law is about. We have to understand when we're saying this word, this is what is meant by sovereign, not a slave. So everyone is a sovereign. A sovereign is a monarch. Again, mon means one and archon means ruler. So when people ask me, what kind of government do you want? I tell them I want anarchy and I want monarchy. And they're like, how could you have those things simultaneously? Because if you have internal monarchy, you can have external anarchy. See, we need to have the rulership within, and we need to get rid of the rulership without. This is the kingdom we need to master, and we need to set aside the concept of mastery and slavery in the external domain, in the physical world. Sovereignty, a sovereign is a monarch, which means a single ruler who rules only the kingdom of self. Sovereignty is a state in which one controls one's own thoughts, emotions, and actions, and by bringing them into unity or non-contradiction or non-duality, attains mastery over one's own consciousness. Sovereignty could be considered the equivalent of true self-control, true self-mastery, true self-love, or true self-ownership. It's all of these things. And ultimately, it means not a slave. That's what has to be remembered above all else. Let's look at the negative internal expression for natural law, which is confusion. Now, confusion results when we are in ignorance. That's the emotional dynamic, the feeling that takes place within the individual. This is the lack of understanding. Confusion only happens in a lack of understanding. When we have not taken in knowledge, because we are afraid, we are in fear, okay? Ignorance results, and then confusion happens internally. So look, remember, here's the essence, that's the foundation. This is that first stage, that first building block that we called knowledge or lack thereof. Okay? This is the second building block that we called understanding or lack thereof. This is true understanding when truth has been taken in and accepted. And this is the lack of understanding. Now, in that state of lack of understanding, we're confused. So there's no rulership within. Inside of us, there's anarchy, which means the absence of ruler. Of a ruler, not the absence of rules, which I'm going to get into later. Anarchy means there's no ruler, no master. So if there's no master inwardly, we have a big problem, because that means there's no self-mastery, there's no self-control, there's no self-discipline, and ultimately, there's no self-love. And that results in an understanding that we don't truly own ourselves. It would result in the absence of self-ownership, which is what we're experiencing as a species. That other people believe they own other people. This is what I found as a picture representing confusion. Someone who doesn't know themselves. Doesn't know themselves, completely attached to a ego identity. Their whole mind is all wrapped up. I believe I'm this businessman. I believe I'm this banker. I believe I'm this lawyer. I believe I'm this doctor. And that's my identity, and if something goes wrong with that, there goes my identity. There's who I am down the drain, you know? So this negative aspect of the internal expression of natural law is confusion, or what I call internal anarchy, meaning no ruler within. Confusion is the state of mind in which the being is ruled by fear and ignorance. Confusion could be seen as internal opposition within one's own consciousness. In other words, being torn apart from within in such a way that one's own thoughts, emotions, and actions are in perpetual contradiction with each other. A thought, emotion, and action are not in alignment. As we think, is not how we truly feel and is not how we act. There's total contradiction and separation, no unity amongst those three aspects of consciousness. That's confusion. The fourth expression of natural law is what happens externally in the macrocosm, in society. When you have a bunch of people who are in either this dynamic within their own consciousness or a bunch of people who are in this dynamic in their own consciousness, a state results in the society at large, because the society at large is comprised of the aggregate quality of the individuals that comprise that society. All right? So if there's love present and knowledge has been taken in and it's been understood and we understand that we're sovereign and we're expressing self-ownership and self-mastery, what state manifests in society? Freedom. There it is. Freedom can only manifest when those preceding conditions are in place. It cannot magically manifest by any other means. If we say we want to be free, this is the path we have to take. Consciousness, acceptance of truth, and an understanding of our own sovereignty through self-mastery. It can't happen any other way. It's not possible. This is what the picture I chose for freedom. This is actually from the cover, The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke. This is the cover image from that book with chains being broken that were formerly holding the earth in captivity. I think it's a great image that represents what freedom is about. It's not about my freedom. It's about our freedom. So the positive aspect of the external expression is freedom, or what I call external anarchy, meaning externally there are no rulers. There is no condition of masters and slaves. Okay? So that's what anarchy actually means, the absence of slavery. That's what it really means. True freedom for all should be seen as the goal of spiritual development. Such a state can only manifest as a result of human society's adherence to natural law. Can only manifest. Not just will manifest, the only way it is possible for it to manifest is if we understand and adhere to natural law. Okay, so that's the positive external expression, what happens in society. Now, there's a negative external expression, and you can call it multiple things. You can call it totalitarianism. You could call it slavery. I term it simply control, externally imposed control. Okay, it doesn't mean, self-control. It means literally someone outside of your own being is trying to control you and own you. So yeah, a good way of looking at it would be slavery as well, because control leads to slavery. Control is what I call external monarchy, meaning there's a ruler from without that believes they do own you and wants to continue to own you as their subject or slave. And this manifests in things like the oncoming police state, which I wouldn't even say is oncoming, I would say it's here. Say we're already living in it. It's not something that's going to happen in the future, it's something that's happening in the present. People talk about it as something they're trying to avoid from happening. What makes people think it's not already happening? The negative aspect of the external expression of natural law is control, what I call external monarchy, one external ruler. The concentration of illusory power, in the hands of institutions like government. Control is the pathway to all forms of evil and destruction. It results when a society lives in direct opposition to natural law. The fifth and final expression for natural law, how it operates in our lives, is what I call the manifestation, or the result that we create. So the positive manifestation is order, or what we would call all the things we say we want. Manifested goodness, everything being okay, not creating self-inflicted chaos or suffering. This would be, we get what we say we want to get. And there's requirements for that, and here they are. There's the requirements. You got to be in this vibratory energy of consciousness. You have to accept the truth and develop knowledge. You have to have an understanding that you're a sovereign being, and you have to work toward the manifestation of true freedom. Then you'll have all the things you say you want, manifested goodness and order in your life. And that's the only path to it. So this is what I viewed order as being like, okay? We have beings that are actually full of the light, and they're working toward a world that is based in freedom, cooperation, knowledge, sovereignty, no control. Okay? It's what I call in some of my former presentations cooperative spiritual anarchy, which is the natural condition of humanity. The natural, meaning spiritual, natural condition of the human species that has been blocked from manifesting through mind control, indoctrination, fear-based, trauma-based methods. So that's what I call order, the positive manifestation, manifested goodness. It represents everything we say we want, and it only results when there is balance or justice. Justice comes about through adherence to natural law. Justice can only be present when truth has been accepted in our lives and our behavior has been brought into harmony with natural law. Cannot manifest any other way. That's the positive manifestation. The negative manifestation is the opposite of order, chaos. Chaos is manifested evil. I just put this as, complete disregard for other people, breakdown, me first. Knock everybody else down, get what I want. Don't worry about anybody else being hurt. Don't worry about anybody else's freedom. Don't worry about whether anybody else's rights are being tread all over. Doesn't matter. Let me get mine. Self-preservation is the highest law. Survival is all that matters. Even if I have to step on somebody else to get it, to make that happen. The negative manifestation, chaos, or manifested evil, is the exact opposite of what we say we want. Chaos results when there is imbalance and injustice, which results whenever there is ignorance of truth and behavior which is in direct opposition to natural law. So that's our chart, and one last thing I want to say about it is that the manifestations or the expressions of natural law are what I would call, they're unilateral. They don't cross into each other, okay? There's no such thing as, well, I've accepted the truth and I've developed knowledge, so now I'm in a state of confusion. It doesn't work like that. Okay? You can't go from ignorance to sovereignty, to the understanding that you're sovereign. You cannot cross the area of these charts. Once you're here, you can only go here. In order to get here, you got to come from here. In order to get here, you got to come from here, and here. You don't get there from any of these. You don't get here from anything in this column. You don't get here from anything in this column. Okay? Please keep this in mind. These expressions are unilateral.
You can't skip.
No, they cannot be skipped either. Good question. They must proceed in order and in the same column of expression. So you can only get to order through freedom, which comes about through the understanding that we are sovereign, which comes about through taking in knowledge of truth, and which comes about through staying in a vibratory energy of love or higher consciousness, the openness to truth. That's it. Same thing here. We can only create chaos when our society is bent on control, okay? Because we are confused beings that don't understand our sovereignty and think other people can legitimately own us or rule us, and that comes from a place of ignorance or refusal of the truth, which is based in fear. Can only manifest that way.